Okay, we are going to talk about speaking with presentation aids. This happens a lot in today's society, and we typically see it in the way that we teach and the way a lot of people present things. They have something available for you to look at, and we're going to talk about why a lot of speakers do that. These are really short chapters, and they go by really quickly, so don't be surprised when we're done with this chapter really quickly. So we're going to talk about the functions of presentation aids, why they're used, why a lot of well-versed speakers use presentation aids. We're going to talk about the different type of presentation aids that you can use and the different options you have for you displaying presentation aids. So the functions, they help your audience members retain information. This is probably the most important function that there is when we are talking about speaking. So you want your audience to remember what you're talking about, and when you use different methods of learning, then you are giving your audience members more options to learn from. So you're giving them the visual option, you're giving them the auditory option. If you give them something to touch, a handout or something like that, you're giving them a kinesthetic option. So you're giving them a lot of different options so that they want to listen and that they want to retain that information. Excuse me. It also promotes interest and motivation. Many of us are afraid to get up there and speak because we think everybody is staring at us. But what happens when we have a presentation aid is that it gives our audience something else to look at. So it makes them want to listen to your speech. If you show a compelling picture or an interesting graph, it makes them want to listen to what you're saying because they're like, wow, that's really powerful. Think about when we watch sad commercials of beaten up dogs. It makes you want to give to the ASPCA. Or when they show a commercial that has starving children or children with no shoes, it makes you want to donate money to feed these children or to go out and buy a pair of Toms so that these children can have a pair of shoes. It conveys our information concisely, so in a very short time frame, in a very short period, a person can read something and it can help them retain the same thing that you're saying as they're reading it. And it does it quickly, and it does it a lot of times more aesthetically pleasing than just listening to you or just watching you present it. And most importantly, it lends in a professional image. So it looks like you're prepared. Even if you're not prepared, if you have a visual aid, a presentation aid, it typically makes you look more prepared. So it makes your audience think, wow, she's prepared because she at least took the time to make a presentation aid. The types of presentation aids, so you can have props and models. So if you, for example, I had a student a couple of years ago who gave a speech over 3D printing, and she brought in some things that she had actually printed herself. I had another student who taught the class how to do origami in his how-to speech, and he brought in some things that he had made, and then he made a piece of origami while he was speaking. Showing pictures, again, if you were talking about something such as, donating money to starving children or donating money to the ASPCA, using pictures would help your audience understand and kind of draw on that pathos, that emotional. Graphs and charts give your audience something to look at. It's sometimes can be a little bit difficult if your audience doesn't know how to comprehend that graph or that chart or how to read it. It might be a little bit more difficult to get your message across because they don't really understand what you're saying. Audio, video, and multimedia, these are also really good tools to use. If you can find a video that demonstrates what you're talking about, or you can find some good audio to play while you're talking, it can be very interesting. It can also be very hard to work into your speech because it might take up a lot of time, which you should be presenting your topic. One time I had a student talk about the effects of liposuction, and he had his speech so perfectly timed that he had a video happening behind him of liposuction, of the process of liposuction. It was like a cartoonesque kind of video, and he was talking with the video, and it was so interesting, and it was so well planned. He made a very good grade because it was so well planned and so well timed, and you could tell that he put time and effort into preparing for that. So a lot of times that gives us the opportunity to see how well you are prepared if you are in sync with your presentation aid. I definitely do not recommend using the animation screens where they transition for you, because if you get off, it can throw off the remainder of your speech if you're off even just a couple of seconds. So if you have a clicker available, or if you have to walk back and forth to the mouse or to the keyboard just to keep clicking the slides, it's often more beneficial to do that as opposed to having it timed and risking a time malfunction. Some different options for displaying the presentation aid. Typically, we're going to use computer-generated presentation aids. We're going to have PowerPoints, Prezi, Keynote, a video, something on YouTube, something that is displayed on a computer using some kind of technology, because we are the technological age, and this is where the generation that we are is using these computer-generated aids. Flip charts, we don't really see them used as much, but if you're giving, an impromptu speech at work, or you're brainstorming, at work, and you're in a meeting with some employees and you're giving a presentation, but you start brainstorming, you might use a flip chart, or write on a chalkboard or whiteboard, which we typically don't see chalkboards anymore. But I don't really recommend like drawing something out on the whiteboard or chalkboard and then referring back to it. If you do use one of these types of presentation aids, I would do it as you're going. So it could be something that's like a process that you can draw out. Using handouts can be really helpful, especially if you're doing something that requires your audience to remember something. So one time I went to a presentation on suicide prevention, and how we as instructors can help our students work through issues that they have with suicide and struggles that they have with suicide. And they gave these amazing resources, but they gave all of these amazing resources on a PowerPoint presentation. And they were like going really fast through the presentation, so we weren't able to catch all of the resources that they had offered. So after the fact, they emailed out a list of those resources, and they told us, this is where you can refer to, you can go to our website or something like that. But it would have been, in a scenario like that, it would have been much more effective if they had handed us a handout and said, here's these resources, here's these phone numbers. If you need to talk to somebody or your students need to talk to somebody, here's what you can do, here's where you can go, as opposed to just saying, well, remember all of this stuff, because now I couldn't tell you what we had talked about in that meeting and what resources they had offered to us without referring back to my email. So if it's something like that, if you're giving your audience, if you're getting your audience something like email addresses or phone numbers or something like that, give them something concrete that they can take home with them. So like I mentioned in the beginning, these presentations are really short because there's a lot of this information you guys already know. It's common sense information because it is using presentation software and presenting with presentation software, which is oftentimes something you've already done, because this is, if you took BCIS in high school, then this is a class that you've already taken and it's something you've already done. So if you have any questions about how to present with a presentation aid or what to do in a certain situation, please don't hesitate to ask. I am happy to answer any and all questions.